now we're still in, showing how Mary ties to Daniel, but now the plot thickens. We were talking about the 47 here in Daniel. My computer is very slow because Microsoft Word doesn't work well when there are multiple Word documents. It used to work really great until they kept improving it to the point where it's really hard to use now. That 47 in black in the middle of the screen on the left is where we left off, and I explained the dual entendre meaning of it. First of all, to signify a net 47 that Daniel was debiting, which made it seem like he knew Christ would die early, because if he didn't know, or if it wasn't going to happen, or if it just plain wasn't scheduled and there wasn't anything going to be said about it, you wouldn't have this 47 here. This number here would have been 54. Okay? And Mary, at the time she talks, obviously knows about the significance of that because of the way she constructs the character of Christ's life here, leaving it open to what we call 53 AD, but it's his age 57, 56, 57. That really matters to say 56, 57, which I'm going to get into. She leaves it open, knowing full well it might not happen. And then also she had used symbolically the 47 here, and what we covered in the last episode was how the 47 on the one hand looks like a debit, okay, from 54 in order to balance to the total. On the one hand it looks like a debit, but the other thing is that if Christ dies early, and of course we know with hindsight he did, then you got a 40 plus a 7. A 40 plus a 7, which historically is how it's played, except that sometimes the 7 plays inside the 40, as in, the 7 fat and 7 lean year dream of Joseph. And of course, that ended up playing, characterizing his entire time as vizier from age 30 to age 110. The first 33 years when he was age 30, when Pharaoh appointed him as vizier, he was, reorganizing the kingdom. And then in the last 7 years of his first 40, he reclaimed the Fayum Depression, which we find outside the Bible without his name on it, but it's the same time period. And then that would have been followed immediately by the 7 lean years. Okay, there wouldn't have been a hiatus. It's back-to-back 40s. God does that a lot. You have back-to-back 40s with David being king and with Saul being king. Then you have that Saul's kingship is regarded as a negative. We know that Saul ruled 40 years not from the Old Testament, but from Paul in Acts 13. Acts 13 around verse 20, where he's doing a 490 accounting for the Jews that he's talking to in the Greek city-states. I think it was Athens. But there's another back-to-back 40 to make up for the bad 40, which was David, making up for Saul, and then on top of him it was Solomon. So 40 is used as a savior number with a 7 inside it, and sure enough, David had 7 years of civil war, okay, before he became king over all Israel. So he was 40 years king over Israel, but 33 of those, he was king over all Israel. I'm sorry, he was 40 years king, but 33 of those years he was king over all Israel, and the extra 7 years he was king only at Hebron. So you see the pattern is established for encasing the 7 in the 40. So that as we were talking about the 47, the question became, well, what if the Jews reject Christ? He thus died 7 years early. We went through that in the last episode. He died 7 years early. He lived to be 33. So the 7 years of the 40 played in reverse order compared to David. But the 7 years were not, they didn't play immediately. They were housed themselves inside a mirroring 40, the first 33 years of which reimbursed the Jews for the time that, as it were, Christ used up, since they rejected him. They get reimbursed for the time they didn't want. Okay, and then that extra 7 that they themselves rejected got played against them in the last 7 years of the 40. You see that? See, you have to understand that the whole Jewish culture is very big on this kind of number crunching. Okay? You start learning it even today in Judaism as a kid. You know, when you're celebrating Passover or the holidays or the dreidel, everything is numbers and money. They're using it as skills to teach you. Okay? And even today, they measure time in years from some past event. They don't measure the years right anymore. Okay? They don't measure it right. But they do measure it. They're addicted to that. You know, I remember when growing up, my dad had converted to Judaism. We had to learn, you know, when we learned about Passover and we learned about, you know, Esther and Hamatoshen and the dreidel, especially the dreidel. I was good at that. We had to learn, you know, 3 this, 6 that, 7 this other thing. And you learn little rhymes, okay, to go with the numbers. All right? So, I mean, you know, that's pretty common in Jewish childhood, at least in American Judaism. I'd have to imagine it's common in Judaism the world over. But it's just constant numbers, constant. And there's always a metaphorical significance to the numbers. It's not Bible codes. It's just traditional, you know, it derives from memorizing the syllables. So you got a 40, you got a 40 and a 7, but the composition is now different due to rejection of Christ. It's 33 plus 7, making the 40. And then the last 7 is still the tribulation. And that's why Daniel's wording and number crunching here is so evocative and, you know, like dual entendre. What we think is ambiguous in the Bible is often dual entendre. There are 2 meanings, both are true. They apply to different books, different sets of accounting for either a doctrine or time. You know, there's boundaries to your property. 1 foot over the boundary of your property is somebody else's property. That's an antithesis of your own. So often the Bible seems contradictory when all it's doing is setting boundaries and beyond which the opposite is true. But we don't pay enough attention to the wording in the Bible, so that's why we get so confused. So here, look, 47 is debited from 54. Okay, if he didn't expect a problem with the hanging Chad 7 owing on the 49 years, this wouldn't be a 47. So right away you're alerted to that. So now look at the dual entendre. He's debited for the fact that the 7 years is in the 62nd week. For sure that's what he's doing. Alright, but he's also telling you, hi, it might play as a 40 and a 7. 47. Get that? Isn't that clever? Now, in the bottom screen, it's not to be, you know, to let you know that Daniel's numbers, you know, didn't escape notice. They didn't escape Mary's notice, and they didn't escape Paul's notice. This bottom screen, let me enlarge it so you can see it, is the meter that I've been doing since December 2010 on Psalm 90, and I have spent time, I've documented how each one of these numbers is an AD date that is surprisingly the same as our own BC AD dates, and I don't know why they're so close. I really don't. It just shocks me. Paul is writing when Christ would have been 56. He's playing on what Mary had done down here when she ended her own poem with a 56. It's essentially another AD system. It's just that our ADs don't correspond to 56 because Dionysius cut out 3 years from Augustus when he was calculating ADs. So we have to treat Christ as if he was born 4 BC. Late. It's really late. It's at Hanukkah 4 BC by our standards. Okay. So that comes out to 53 AD instead of 56. But you see, if it's late 4 BC, you add 3 years. Okay, and that's what a lot of people do when they do this accounting. The problem is that your BC dates are going to be screwed up, though. If you just flat add 3 years to AD, your BC doesn't work out. That hung me up for almost, I don't know, some months when I was trying to balance Daniel. You can't just add 3 years to AD and have the calendar work. It won't work. So Paul, playing off Mary, as you can see in the upper screen, 217 in the right-hand side, Paul picks up where Mary left off. And of course, 47 now, the presaging of the 40 and the 7. This is really a year 47. It's talking about Claudius, to be specific. Death of Caligula and the coming to power of Claudius. And Paul is measuring every syllable to the Roman emperors. Even in one of them, this E part in Telematos, he measures that to 2 different, it occurs twice or 3 times. If it's 3 times, he's measuring it to 3 different times when the will, this means the will, okay, will and purpose, he measures that exact letter to the year in which one Caesar makes a will for another person to be Caesar. He does it 3 times, measuring it to an exact person in Roman history that's future of him. And this is incredible the way he does this. And, I've already done the videos that I've posted, taking you, this is the period of the severance. So this is real easy to look up. That's 238 AD. That's the crisis of the 3rd century. Okay? In the videos, I've taken you up here to 283, and 283 is the year in which Diocletian comes to power. I haven't finished the videos past that yet. So when you're looking at this in Paul, now it's going to make a whole lot more sense because he's playing off Mary. And I haven't shown how he's playing off Mary yet, but he is. That's 40, and that's 7. This is really the year 47 AD. Okay? When Caligula dies, he times it to Epuranias in the heavens. Yeah, that's what Caligula thought he was, a god. So he gets his apotheosis in hell. And I basically, pointed that out. Okay, wait a minute. I'll show you where that is. This is the most important part of this document, even if you disagree with everything I say. It's got a really great chronology section that has a lot of links to the Roman emperors. See this chronology chart? You click on that link, and that takes you to this first section here of sources. These are the sources that are either scholars or current writers at the time of each emperor, like Dio Cassius or the Church Fathers or Eusebius. He's a part of the Church Fathers, but he's also a historian, bad one. Jerome, Josephus, all these things you can find on the web or download them. The actual Roman Fasti. The Roman Fasti is how they kept track of time. You really need that. And Plutarch and Porphyry, okay, Plattner, that's the geography. I mean, these are all either contemporary writers to the Roman emperors. Aurelius Victor, for example, that's all in Latin. or that one, the epitome of Aurelius there might be in English, I forget. This is Zosimus in Greek and Latin. That's Zosimus in English. Okay, so you got a lot of writers here that you can just look up on the web by using the links. Okay, and then in each section here, see this 10 corresponds to 10 AD, 20 AD, 27 AD. And so the emperors at that time, the underlined portions are links to sources outside of me, unrelated to me, where you can read up on their lives and what's said about them. And then the text that Paul is using, the keywords that are satirical about them, okay, are here highlighted. Okay, and it's the same kind of format that you've just seen me do on Mary. The same kind of style. That style has been in place ever since Psalm 90. So what Paul is doing is playing off Mary, and he's playing off Daniel, as we just saw here with the 47. And look at how that one works. Okay, in the Greek, in the heavens by means of Christ or in Christ. When you have the word preposition "and," it's always dual entendre. By means of and through and in like a location. And see, here he is. So here's the 47 right next to him. It's 47 syllables cumulatively at that point. Alright, so that's a little play. Anybody knowing the timeline, from Daniel, is going to realize this. Okay, well, if Israel rejects Christ, you got the 7-year tribulation reserved, and then you got 40 years that the temple's going to stand because it's owed those 40 years due to Israel being late in the land. So you see, this stuff was so well known to these people, they could make little plays on the numbers and the meter like this. And it helps you understand what's meant. I mean, if all you're looking at is this text, with those living in heaven via Christ, it sounds really syrupy. It sounds like something like every other Bible verse sounds. But there's more to it than that. There's a historical underpinning. And there's a lot of satire. Because this is a satire on Caligula's death right here. And that's what I'm trying to explain in the videos. But my point in this video is to just show you that the 40 and the 7, okay, is being played on. It's evocative. Paul is actually leading up to a series of, because Mary's sort of referencing it, but not much. This is when Christ is 56. This is where Mary leaves off. Okay, we saw how this is a play on Daniel. All right. Then Paul launches into, and I explained this at some length in the 11 GGS videos, up through 11R, 11A through 11R. These are potential trib dates. And we're going to focus on this one in a minute, because that's the next thing I want to cover. These are all potential trib dates. And Paul is basically launching into, on the one hand, the text here is something that you remember to, as a promise. But he's really giving you an outline of history, of future history, to show you why the rapture isn't going to happen. Okay? And it's really a series of potential rapture dates. And then if they don't come to pass, like they were expecting the temple to go down here, that's they were expecting the trib to begin in 70 AD, the temple to go down in the middle of it because that's midweek, Daniel 9:27, and then they were expecting the millennium to start in 77 AD, what we call 77 AD. That's what I don't understand. Why is their accounting agreeing with ours? And so Paul's characterizing that, all those potentials, as a 21, meaning that there would be 3 sevens, there would be 3 generations after the current one, the one he's in. You see, this is Paul's current generation when he writes. But, he ends up dying here at 68. I don't know if he knew that. But he's basically positing 3 generations, because there are a total of 4 generations on earth at any one time. So there are enough people to finish church. Okay, so he's positing 3 generations over the next 21 years the 3 generations besides his own, growing, enough of them growing so that the rapture can happen. So the church is mature, because that's Ephesians 4:12 is the criterion for the rapture. Ephesians 4:12, when we all reach the destination being maturation of Christ, which is explicit in that verse. So he's playing it in advance. Okay, 3 more generations the trib could happen. And if it doesn't, then you have a bad period for the next 7. And I cover that extensively in the 11 GGS videos. But I wanted you to see how he's taking the 56 of Mary, and he's taking the 47 of Daniel, and he's integrating them into real future history. This part of it's past history. Anything prior to 56 is past history. But this is all future when he writes. And he's integrating the 2 together in order to display the update on what Daniel 9:25 through 27 means, and how it plays now the church is in place rather than the old timeline for Israel. Okay, so the point of this video so far is just to show you that the meter is extensively referenced, both metaphorically and actually as actual history in years. All right? And it's balanced to a schedule of time, as Daniel's doing here, with 2 contingencies. It's balanced to a schedule of time which has to run for Israel up to 57 years before. Remember, 757 is 5,250 years, the total allotment of time pre-church that Moses laid out in Psalm 90 with his 5 70s, configured as 84, 70, 70, 70, and 56. So 56 metaphorically comes to mean the last part of history that's, iffy, because that's the harvesting of the Gentiles, and that's the tribulation. So they're always doing their accounting up to that point, because the 57 was a constant in their day, before church. After church, this 47 becomes the number. 40 to play out the temple time so that the land gets its reimbursement. And then the extra 7 that's owed on the 49 ends up being encapsulated inside that 40. And then that leaves only the 7 that's remaining, Daniel 9:27, when, Israel's time resumes. You see how all this fits? And you see how much they're playing on it? In other words, this whole business with how to use the meter was known. I couldn't invent this kind of configuration. I didn't write these words. I didn't write the syllables. I had no idea, frankly, that all this was here when I started on this journey. I really didn't. I was just trying to balance Daniel, and I was trying to see if there were missing syllables in Isaiah 53, because people thought that there were missing words. That's the Isaiah scroll. That's Muller's scroll. There's an extra word in there that is from the LXX that made, the Jewish scribes think that there were words missing in Isaiah 53:11, 10 and 11. But there aren't. The LXX translation is an explanatory translation. It took me 3 years to figure that out. In the process, I learned this meter stuff. I just didn't know that it was so extensive, and I certainly didn't know this Daniel thing was going to be so corroborative of Isaiah and Psalm 90, and I didn't know Psalm 90 was the foundation of it. I found that out after I learned Isaiah. So you see, this is something you can actually figure out. If a brainiac can do it, you can do it. If a brainiac can do it, then why didn't the scholars do it? And the only thing I can think of is that they're too busy quoting other scholars. It's not that they're not smart. Every scholar's underpaid. And maybe that's why. They're too busy with the politics. They have to quote other scholars. They don't get to spend as much time studying the text de novo as they'd like. And so, one generation after the next, everybody has to do the same thing. It got missed for 2,000 years. That's the only thing I can think of. I mean, either I'm a genius or they're stupid. And neither one of those things can be true. So you have to attribute it to the politics and the unfortunate academic practice of publish or perish, and always having to accredit past scholarship. And you spend so much time learning what the past scholars said and quoting them and taking positions on them, you never have any time to do original study. That's all I can think of as the reason why this material isn't known. And that's why I'm playing librarian and documenting it, okay? You know, I'm 58 now, who knows how long I'll live. Take me the rest of my life to document all this. So as you can see, hopefully I've made it clear in spite of myself. God's making it clear to you, I hope, that this is a real number of years. It's also a metaphor, and it also ends up applying with and without Israel accepting Christ. In other words, God's faithfulness to her will still be kept. Those who think that they inherit the promises of Israel are dead wrong. There was only one conditional promise to her. That was brideship. That is all that's left for church to get. And we have no set time, which is the main theme of Ephesians. Ephesians is explaining, starting out with this metered time poem, Ephesians is explaining we have no set time. All right, that's the whole purpose of the book, which gets short shrift, you know. People make up little homilies about how you should treat your spouse instead of really looking at the text, which, because it closes at 4:34, get that? 4:34, 62 weeks, playing on Daniel. We're still in the 62nd week of history. That's what that means. Paul's explaining why the rapture doesn't happen. And then by the time he gets to Ephesians 4, he tells you what the criterion is. When churches mature corporately. In other words, we fit together as a society. You know, God can, based on all of our decisions and everything that we make, God does whatever it is that He wants to do, and at that point the configuration is complete, and we're mature corporately. That's when the rapture happens, which is pre-trib. Okay, so you see that part, because I got to move on. The next thing I need to do, and this is going to be really easy to understand, is I kept telling you, and you didn't know if I was just making it up or what, that Mary is dating everything from Hanukkah. And it looks really good, because if I take real Bible books, starting them there, I mean, it's not really Bible. It's not inspired. But it's a real book that you can look at where they measure those years. Okay, and we know that Christ celebrated Hanukkah, Feast of Lights. I mean, we know that's a valid holiday. We know when it happened. We don't need the book of Maccabees to prove it, but we do have it. Okay? So these are all real dates. They really match something that impacted both Israel and, you know, her protector, namely Rome. These are pivotal periods in history that Mary is obviously referencing, because there are too many of them, they fit too well. Okay? You got what, 46 to 55. You got 9 verses here with some pretty extensive and sophisticated metering going on. All right? And they match. They match in doctrinal content. They match in history that you can vet. So obviously, this count works. All right. And I showed you how she's playing on the accounting of Daniel, but there was one part of it I didn't show you, but I'm going to show you now, because Paul does the same thing. Look at that. Hanukkah, 164 BC in our BC AD dating system. So, you know, you have to allow a year either direction. Okay? Daniel, date lines, we're now in the middle of the screen. Daniel date lines when he prays as 49 years after the temple fell, which is beginning of the 49th year after 586 BC. So anybody telling you that Daniel was written late can't read Hebrew. Because if you could read Hebrew, you could count the syllables, and you'd know this was a dateline, because Isaiah does the same thing, because Psalm 90 does the same thing, and there are scads of other places where this is also being used, like Psalm 22, Psalm 89, probably Deuteronomy 32. I haven't parsed it yet. Probably Psalm 110:1. Probably 1 Kings 8 when Solomon prays. That just came to mind. I'll have to look at it. All right. So he's saying, using a very, very sophisticated but yet well-established system of dating. He's saying, hi, this is what I'm dating. This is like a dateline in a newsreel. Okay? This is why I'm writing this. Okay? And just to make sure you understand that, 24 represents 24 years after the death of Nebuchadnezzar. It's the same year as this. 24 years after Nebuchadnezzar died in 562 BC is this year here, 538 BC. Ding, 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 ding. And in case you missed that, the same date is 73 sevens from when? 1050 BC, where Moses left off in Psalm 90. Now, Daniel isn't doing that to prove to you and me, moderns, who, dispute everything, about when he wrote. He's not doing it to prove it. He's doing it because he's saying that there is a doctrinal significance to the time of his prayer. And if you look at 1 Kings 8, you'll understand why. Because Solomon said, when anybody prays, please listen, God. Okay, then you better be pretty careful about what you pray. Because if anything you pray is going to be accepted, you want to make sure you time it right, and you want to be sure you say it right. The same thing applies to us. We can ask anything in Christ's name and he'll do it. That's a refrain in the New Testament. Okay, so think long and hard about what it is you want to pray for, because you might get it. I mean, I prayed for the terrorists to die. I got to tell you. I prayed for them all to get killed. And I am very happy that Saddam Hussein is dead. I am very happy that what's-his-face, God, I can't even remember his name anymore. Bin Laden is dead. And some of those other heads are dead. And I keep praying for them all. That I want the Muslims just to all go in the toilet. They either convert or go into the toilet. That's their own religion, is to make you, convert on the blade of a sword or you die. Okay, I want them to convert or die. That's what they want of us, so that's what I vote for them. Okay? And there are a lot of good Muslims out there, and I desperately want them to convert. And there are a lot of terrorists out there using Islam. Islam's a terrorist religion. Okay, well then I want them to die. There are people just who are beyond the pale. You can't fix them. Okay, and some of them get that way very early in life. Okay, they should die because there are a lot of other people on this planet who ought to live, who aren't negative like that, who aren't terrorists. So you got terrorists and non-terrorists. Okay, the terrorists should die and the non-terrorists should live. And if it means that those people, the terrorists, die, too bad. The guilty should die. Period. Now, I don't know who those are. I don't want a genocide. But you know what? It's just like what God did to Israel. Hi, you go beyond the pale with me, I'm going to take down your temple. Okay, that applies across the board. So, 49 years is when he was supposed to start praying. That was in Jeremiah 25. That's how Daniel introduces Daniel 9. He's reading it. He realizes that the 49 years are about to be up. He knows it's the right time, and he starts to pray. Beginning of the 49th year, which is also 24 years after Nebuchadnezzar died, which is also 73 sevens after 1050 BC. Now watch this. Keep that 73 in mind, because I got to scroll down. Bear in mind that we're talking about the delivery of the innocent and the killing of the guilty. All right? That's it. Some people cannot be rehabilitated. Some societies cannot be rehabilitated. And that's the theme of what's down here. This is where Daniel ends. Note it well. Let me show you. As I tried to explain, Daniel's operating on two time tracks. This time track 1 is just straightforward chronology. This is time track 2, which is syncopated to the syllables in Isaiah. Isaiah did a straightforward year-by-year chronology, first David to last David. There are syllables in ellipsis when he does it. namely 252 syllables are in ellipsis between Daniel 52:15 and Isaiah 52:15 and Isaiah 53:1, which are being added back here by Daniel. And then the second ellipsis in Isaiah, from which Daniel gets his 434. See, Daniel doesn't come up with these numbers on his own. He's getting them from Isaiah. The second ellipsis in Isaiah is between Isaiah 53:10 and Isaiah 53:11, the reimbursement to the temple for its standing time of 364 years, because it was Isaiah who predicted when the temple would go down. His actual Isaiah 53 is a year-by-year, blow-by-blow calendar of exactly when the temple would go down. He timed his writing to be in 712 BC, which was 126 years before the temple would go down, and when it would go down, it would be 126 years short of its 490-year allotment. That is a characteristic of Bible time poems. They employ equidistance. And that's what Daniel's using here. See, you got the 49, and what should be a 49 down here is 46, because he put the extra 7 up here with a 49 beside it. You see the pun? There should be 49 down here to show equidistance. But instead he sticks it in the middle because he's sticking the extra 7 in the middle, because Messiah's got to be born first, and those 7 years could be truncated if he doesn't live long enough. And all of that plays on Manasseh being age 49 when he's captured. Equidistance, in order to tag and make something known. Okay, so Isaiah had used equidistance. So we know when Isaiah was written. So he's using two time tracks. One, straightforward chronology, that's typical, and the other one playing on Isaiah, picking the very syllables that Isaiah uses for Manasseh. The next picking it, this is temple down, syllable 203 in Isaiah. Alright? And then then this next one, this is the next 49 syllables. Again, playing on 49. See, it's very pointed. He's full circle to his own time. See, he starts in 5. This is good drama. There's another sign of a time poem. It's palindromic. 538 BC is when he prays. He goes backwards in time, then comes back forwards in time. This is also key to good drama. And he's back at the same year, at the same 49. See, this is deliberate. I couldn't make this up. I didn't even know how. It took me, I don't know, months to figure out what he was doing. And it's really important to say this, okay? He starts his chronology here in 9:6. He first does his date line, 49, 24, 73. That's a date line. That's not part of the chronology. It's outside it. And yet he plays on the aggregate totals when he makes his chronology, which starts at 1010 BC and ends full circle to his capture, to his voting, on two time tracks. After that, he's going forward in time to fill in the timeline of the man of time in Daniel 2, which talked about what? The head of gold. That was Nebuchadnezzar. Right there. Daniel 9:15, part of the petition. That's the head of gold. See, when he's evoking this timeline, the petition says, okay, God, you led us out of Egypt. That's 9:15. Yeah, you led us out of Egypt and you led us into, this is sotto voce, you led us into Nebuchadnezzar, who you hired to take us down. Okay, that was what Isaiah had predicted in Isaiah chapter 40 forward. And also, of course, what was predicted by Jeremiah. And, Nebuchadnezzar even knew that. And it finally happened. Okay, fine. You hired this guy to take us down. It's future now. Future of his capture. But past in terms of when he's still speaking. This whole period covers Nebuchadnezzar's rule till his death. Right here. Alright? So he's petitioning. And he's using the man of time. That's the head of gold. Daniel 2. Alright? The next one is the chest of silver. That's Persia. When Daniel's talking, Persia has just taken over. Okay, so he's in this period right now when he prays, but he had already gone full circle up here in the Isaiah timeline to run it in tandem. Okay, so since he's running it in tandem, and since he's in this period here with the chest of silver, he's just taking this timeline and paralleling it to what? To the cause of the belly of brass. He's linking the parts of the man of time in the future. Because, 499 BC is future of him. He's in 538. Okay, he's just, the chest of silver is just taking power when Daniel prays. Okay, and he already knows about the belly of brass, so he's linking, and of course they do. It's due to Darius the Great, all right, who comes after Daniel dies. It's due to Darius the Great that Greece rises. If Darius the Great didn't try to take Thrace and didn't deal with the Scythians, Greece would have remained fragmented. The Greeks all fought with each other. They were proud of their independence. They liked their little petty city-states. They would have never become a nation. Okay? But it's because Darius pushed at them that they finally unified. Okay, so that's how the belly of brass got there. I forget if it's brass or something else. I forget exactly the translation. So then that brought about the next part, all right, which is still Persian as far as the left time track goes. All right, but the right time track is Persia declining. In other words, because of what she does in this time track's going to occur. See, that's what he's been doing all along. Because of Solomon, Manasseh will be there. Because of Solomon, you had all these other kings too. All right, and here's Manasseh in straightforward order, but the indictment that makes the temple go down is due to what Solomon started, and Manasseh continued. They had prostitutes even in the temple in Manasseh's day. After he repented, he came and cleaned them out, but Israel still wanted him anyway. Okay, same thing here. Decline. The decline of Persia owes to it trying to fight Greece, which makes the warring Greeks who would rather fight each other suddenly get together and fight against the Persians. So this is a cause linked to this cause, even as this cause is linked to that cause. You got it? He's making causal connections of disparate points in time through the meter. So when he says the words that he says, he's thinking of this underneath the words, which therefore make the words much more relevant. They don't sound so generic anymore. Same thing is true, of course, of Ephesians or Mary's Prayer, obviously now. Mary's Prayer is the easiest one to see this. Okay? So he's linking these two time tracks. All right? So the next link, of course, is the rise of Greece and the Peloponnesian Wars. That, Greece rises because she's attacked from without. And then when the Persian emperor finally gets smart and he starts playing games with them rather than fighting them, then he backs one side against the other and they fight with each other. Peloponnesus means the area of Greece. And all the Greek tribes were fighting each other for centuries, and they went back to doing that after the Persian emperor got smart and stopped attacking them. Okay? But then there came this guy named Alexander. See, and it's because of this warring that Alexander came about. He was from Macedon. Macedon is Thrace. Thrace, the Macedonian Greeks, were the primary group of sea peoples who colonized the Mediterranean and Carthage. The Carthaginians come from that kind of stock. So does Crete and Cyprus. That's what ships of Kittim means. All right? So that produces Alexander on this side. So he's linking what happens here to the rise of Alexander here. And then again, chronology, in straightforward order, it's just this is what happens next. Macedon and Alexander. Okay, but it's due to the rise of Alexander that Rome gets into the act. Okay? And by the way, the links in here, the link here on the Wars of the Diadochi, I'm not saying it right, and the Punic Wars, those links are really good summaries of the backgrounds of those wars to tie into what I'm telling you. I just found them the other day. Okay, now, if you're still awake, okay, see this date here, and see this date here. Remember that ever since Solomon, okay, of course, David's the cause of Solomon, so there's nothing over here. Ever since Solomon, you have this 2-track thing going on. Okay, whenever he picks up at an Isaiah syllable. Okay, and then after he's picked up through the end of Psalm 90, because he's also tracking to Psalm 90, once he's finished tagging Psalm 90, he just does a straightforward continuation, because this is the man of time in Daniel 2. He doesn't have to quote other scripture because he's got his own from God, in Daniel 2. All right? Now look at that. Macedon and Alexander is the cause of the rise of Rome, because Thrace and all those people colonized first beginning back at Solomon. Okay, that's why this section and this section are both 69 syllables, because this births this. The Thracians, what we call the Thracians, have always been very strong people. They colonized basically the Mediterranean. That's where the Hiram of Tyre and the Sidon and Crete and Cyprus and the whole thing what we call Carthage, because that was really the whole of northern Africa. All right, that's where these people come from. It's due to their pressure that Rome stops fighting amongst itself with the other Latins and decides to unite. See, even as Persia pushed against Greece, and therefore Greece united finally, otherwise it would have always been too fractious, so too the Greeks pushing finally united the fractious Romans. Now, oh, my computer's going funky. Okay. Remember I said, oh, I knew this was going to happen. See that 73 there? Let's see if I can make that really big. All right. See that 73 there? Okay, I'll leave it in the black. Oh, this isn't going to work this way. Okay, see that 73 in black? And then you have to look down here, 284 to 238 BC. Okay, can you do that? Let's see. I tell you what. Let me highlight it. Okay, I'm going to highlight this in, I don't know, what color should I use? Let's use blue. Bright blue. Oops, I did the font that way. I should do the highlight that way. Wait a minute. We'll do the highlight in bright blue, and we'll do you in, oh God. See, every dramatic moment I have always has some kind of glitch. Wait a minute. I was going to be so dramatic, and now I can't. Okay. All right, there we go. We have 43, and we'll just make this a yellow, okay? Really strong yellow. You see the yellow. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. Oh no, we'll make it green. Really strong green. Does that hurt your eyes to watch it? There, we got our two greens. Took a minute and a half to get to my dramatic moment. Okay, the lower right hand bright green. 284 to 238 BC, rise of Rome and the Punic Wars. 238 BC in particular happens to be the year that Hannibal lost Sardinia, and the Romans got so full of themselves they built a navy. Okay? So the Carthaginians really limped home there because they were trying to take over Sardinia. It was a turning point in the Punic Wars. It was during the Second Punic War, which wasn't actually over at that point, but it was a turning point in it. I got that? 238. So let's write that down. 238. Can you see that okay? I'm so excited about this I can't spit. Got that? 238. That's the ending point in Daniel, right? The farthest time track that he's tracking to show the man of time in Daniel 2. You got that? Okay. So now let's subtract the left-hand the left-hand green where it says 73 in big numbers now. So let's do minus 73. We got what? 165. Okay, so that's the end of 165, or what if it's really the end of 238, and what if it's the end of 73? Okay, then 165 could be what? 161, just by off by 1. Wait a minute. 238, we'll subtract 1 here, just for the heck of it. That's, oops, minus 1. Oh, this is going to be more dramatic because it's so frustrating. 237 minus 73, so we'll just assume that there's only minus 1 at the top end instead of at both, because sometimes you have to subtract 2. 164, does that ring a bell? Gee whiz. Gee, maybe that rings a bell. Do you ever hear it ring a bell? Okay, 164. Oh, see, now what's this? What's that? What's that? Oh, you mean to say that Mary was counting her syllables, and Mary was counting both time tracks in Daniel? And she was keying off the same 73 for her own creation? Since it's the second date line, see? 73 years away from what? 73 years from the Punic Wars was what? Hanukkah. So it's kind of like a little pun, you know? 73 years from time track 2. So it's like a little date line at the very beginning. So if you were to add 73, okay, then you would tie exactly back to where Daniel left off on time track 2. Oh, gee. Okay? So now we know she's tying to Daniel for sure, and she's doing it with a little humor too. Alright? And of course then we got Paul, who in his inimitable style, because he can't resist a pun, we got 73 here. See, let me make it really big. See? 73. You know, what do you want me to do? Make it like, well, I can't make it a good color without it looking stupid, so we'll just leave it alone. In black here, 73. That was the schedule for when they thought the temple might go down, because after the 40 years was up and the temple had reimbursed the land for the missing 40 years, that the tribulation would begin. That's the reason for the book of Hebrews. And in mid-year, in mid-7th year, you know, 3.5 years, Daniel 9:27, they expected the temple to go down in what we would call AD 73. What Paul is definitely calling AD 73, because his Anno Domini right here is Christ at 56, really in the just before he turns 57. So there you go, another 73. So Paul is playing on the 73 that Daniel had used, Okay. And my computer's going bad again, of course. So I have all these long delays and I have to make up stuff to say while I'm waiting for the mouse to return. See, there we go. 238 BC. Okay, and 73 from that is Hanukkah. Ding, 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 ding. So Mary's keying off the date line of Daniel right here. And then Paul keys off that as the time for the temple to go down. See, Hanukkah, are you getting the pun here? Hanukkah, the temple had been down and it's restored. It wasn't, demolished, it was desecrated. Okay, well here temple is going to be mid-tribulation desecrated. And what was it Daniel had said in Daniel 7 and 8:14? About the temple being desecrated by who? Antiochus Epiphanes, which was what? 73 years after the end point in Daniel 9's prayer. Beginning to see that somebody's linking the numbers very consciously, and Mary obviously knows what I just showed you in Daniel. So what I just showed you in Daniel cannot be Brainout's invention, because hello, I didn't write the Magnificat, I didn't write Daniel 9, and I certainly didn't write Ephesians 1. Excuse me, they're all playing on the same number. Okay, and of course I go through, the timeline here and how the text matches it. So you're going to have to watch the 11 GGS videos to understand the wry wordplay Paul's using here. Okay, see, one of which is, if the tribulation had happened here, okay, then this is what we would be saying. See, if the tribulation began right here, we would be holy and blemish-free, because the rapture happens, and we're no longer in this body. Well, then we would be holy, really, truly holy, and blemish-free, because we don't have these bodies anymore. We got our new ones, 1 Corinthians 15. It's wordplay like that all of these writers use. And you've seen it in Mary now. You've seen a glimpse of it in Paul. I will leave you to examine how Daniel does it, because Daniel's, wordplay is quite sophisticated, and you really are going to have to read footnote E, which is, I go through verse by verse, and I cross-reference it with the Chronicles and the Kings verses, so you can read Daniel's wry wordplay. See, I take the keywords in the verse and show you how it relates to, like, Solomon and his progeny. All right, verse by verse. It took me weeks to do this, and I still need to do more work on it. Okay, so enjoy. Now you see that 73 from the end point in Daniel 19, 73 years is Hanukkah, and that's why Mary picks up where she does. Okay, and that's why Daniel is being referenced, and you can know that for sure. It's too complicated not to be deliberate. And you can see preview of coming attractions in 11 GGS episodes A through R. I've already shown you some of this in Paul, going all the way up to starting the period of Diocletian, right here, that's 11R, introduces Diocletian. And if you can't, you don't have to wait for me to do the videos, because you've got chronology charts, okay, which have extensive links to the classics or other scholars that are totally unrelated to me. And in addition, you can look up any particular 10 AD, 20 AD, 27, etc. And then in the right-hand column, you can see these links. Like here's the link to Res Gestae, written by Augustus. Okay, well, pompous stuff. Livy's comments on Augustus, what happened to Herod. You can read all these contemporary materials or scholarly materials at your leisure, and I don't know about you, but maybe you should be sick of my videos by now. Just go read these things. Bye.